All right. So, Mark, thank you for joining me today on Career Tools.
My pleasure.
This is great. Long time since the two of us did a Career Tools podcast
Yes.
together.
Although I wrote this original cast 20 years ago and now we've
Yeah.
updated it. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, folks. Today we are re-recording and re-releasing a brushed off, dusted up series of show notes that we originally released back in 2005. We're guessing here that many of our Career Tools listeners haven't been along that or haven't been around that long. I could be wrong. However, for those that are new to our community, this is your opportunity to get this, what we think of as core Career Tools content.
Absolutely.
And for those of you that have been around this long, you haven't heard this podcast in a while. So we're going to dust it off and
Yep.
do it all again.
Yep.
All right. So today we're going to talk about preparing your own resume. Now, again, this is a topic we covered back in 2005, and we're re recording it for today's listeners.
And things have not changed that much
No, no,
at
not when it
all.
comes to resumes. No.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, folks, we're not suggesting when we talk about resumes, we're not secretly encouraging you. We don't do much in secret around here. We're not secretly encouraging you to leave your current company.
It's a
Okay.
bad time to do that, in fact,
But
I
your
would say.
resume is much more than the thing you show to a company that you want to hire you. It's essentially an extension of something called your career management document, which we'll do another podcast about. We have another podcast about
Hmm.
that. Um, and so look, um, we want you to work on your resume. We want you to have a good resume. But if you're thinking that your resume is something that stays off your desk, you're totally right. Um, a resume is something to be seen. I'm sorry, to be heard in terms of talking about it in a resume, but in an interview, but not seen.
Yeah.
You talk about it, but you don't actually show it to anybody at your company, right? Resumes, in terms of your present employer, still have a stigma. If somebody sees your resume on a desk, they're going to assume you're job hunting.
Hmm.
And in fact, we'll recommend at the end of this cast that you review it once a quarter, and you do so when everybody else has left the office or when you're home on a weekend, or if you're working virtually, then you could do it at your desk once you've logged off at the end of the day. Um, it's a negative if people see your resume on your desk. It's actually, it used to be a thing for people to leave their resume on their desk when everybody was at their desk 5 days a week
As a hint?
as a hint. Yeah.
Ooh,
Like, wow,
wow.
I had a bad meeting with my boss. My resume's on my desk. And it
Oh,
would cause your boss to raise her eyebrows at
as
that.
it should.
But the fact is, even if you have a really enlightened boss, they're going to still see that as a negative.
Mhm.
They're going to be frustrated by it. So your resume is yours. It's a personal document. It's not a corporate document. And so you shouldn't be saving it on your company hard drive,
Hmm.
and you should be working on it alone.
Hmm. That's exactly it. And folks, we're drawing some distinctions here between what is a personal document versus what is a work document, in part because in the last 40 years, companies have really turned over the responsibility of managing one's own career to employees themselves.
Yep.
And there was a time back before you and I can remember it when organizations took an active part in the long-term career fulfillment of an individual. Because
Because people went to work for
yeah,
one company. My dad,
forever,
it was a big
35
deal. My
years.
dad was listed on his company's annual report one year because he and three other guys had been there 40 years combined.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen as much as it used to. It
Mm-mm.
happens far more often than the popular press says it does.
Yep, agreed.
But once companies gave up that career management bit, what happened was for many years there in the 70s and 80s and 90s, individuals didn't realize that their companies weren't managing their
Yeah.
careers anymore, and they had to manage them themselves. And in fact, if you ask me on a scale of 1 to 10 to tell you how well even the manager tools community manages their own career, I would say in general, across all professionals, it's probably a 3. And among the manager tools community, it's probably a 5 or a 6, but it needs to be an 8 or a 9. And it's
Yeah.
not hard to do, but it certainly starts with your resume and
Hmm.
knowing how to do it and knowing how to do it well. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and think about that, folks. When the organization is responsible for your career, they at least touch in on your long-term career progression annually. It's the annual review. When the organization was responsible for it, is responsible for it in a way, you could say, they touch in on this at least once a year, probably even quarterly, biannually for some of us. It's
Right.
not like the organization just said, oh, hey, you're hired and threw you on cruise control. No. So think of it that way. If you had an organization to manage your career, they would be in contact with that process
Right.
regularly,
And
as
they're not.
should, and they're not exactly. And now you're the one responsible for said process.
Yeah.
So you need to be doing that yourself
Yeah.
regularly. And what that means is you need a document to capture your career success. And that document is perfect for the creation of a resume.
Yeah. So if you'll just change your thinking and see your resume as a career history, it's not what gets you jobs, it's what gets you interviews, by the way. If you think of it that way, a career history, you're going to be fine, and keep it off your desk. Do it at home, do it after hours, like I said before, when everybody's gone. And you've got to keep it current. We would say that fully 70% of the resumes we get have errors in them.
Mm-hmm.
And the vast majority of the errors are in the most current jobs. And I got to tell you, for people who review resumes, we know what that means. You prepared your resume on short notice. You had the bullets below your, or the paragraphs below your present job already filled out. It's what
Uh-huh.
got you this job, but you didn't have anything on this job. And so you put it together pretty quickly, because
Mm-hmm.
when companies are in a rush, they're in a rush and they really need your resume right away. And you don't take time, you don't double check it, you don't ask somebody else to check it. One of the common mistakes, not just full stops and commas and so on, but also missed words, which Word and even Copilot in Microsoft Word will
Mm-hmm.
not find a missed word about half the time. So a missed word is not misspelled, it's just not there. So you
Yeah.
really have to read carefully.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so if you were prepared on short notice, you're going to get thrown into the no pile because you clearly didn't care enough about the most important career history document you have,
Yeah.
the document that's designed to get you an interview. You're not getting interviews. When people tell us, I'm just not getting interviews, the first thing I say is, let me see your resume. And I usually end up saying, well, your resume stinks, dude. In fact, in our original podcast was titled not how to prepare your resume, but your resume stinks, because
Mm-hmm.
we saw so many of them and they were all terrible.
Yeah. That's exactly it. So, folks, if you think about your resume that way, think about it as career maintenance and management. If you think of the tool that way, when you capture things that you would forget 2 years later if you
Yep.
tried to go back and remember all of those details. And because let's face it, you can't go back and recreate things 2 years after the fact, especially after you've forgotten them. Now, knowing that it's this live document that you're always adding to it while you still have all of those memories fresh in your mind, you can see it's a very powerful tool.
Yeah.
And it doesn't create itself. You
Yeah.
have to do it. You have to engage with this tool if you want it to pay dividends when you're looking for your next job.
Yeah. And in fact, we'll talk about this more later and touch on the idea of a career management document. But in your present job, every quarter, when you review it for accuracy and for completeness, you'll add one or two bullets. And in fact, your
Hmm.
resume will go over our guidance of one page in its draft format. And then when you send it to company A, you'll choose out of the 15 bullets you have in your present job, because you're keeping it current, looking at it every 90 days.
Hmm.
Um, you'll be able to cut out 4 or 5 of those bullets that aren't related to this particular job, but for a different job, you'd cut out 4 to 5 other bullets that aren't as right for that job, because you might
Hmm.
be pursuing multiple different types of jobs. Um, and the reason you need to do that relative to managing your career and your career management document is we have found over and over and over again that when you need a resume is when you least expect to need one.
Hmm.
The opportunities of a lifetime are those things where a target of opportunity shows up. They're the good jobs. Somebody mentions, hey, we're actually hiring. And then you've got to have a resume, but now
Yeah.
your resume is a year old and you're going to slapdash something together. and it's going to hurt you. And you're going to embarrass the person who recommended you get looked
Yeah.
at. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to be preparing a resume at the last minute.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And if you don't know how to pull it together and then you rush something, it's just not going to be as professional as
Yeah.
you want it to be. It's not going to look professional, to Mark's earlier point. It's going to have mistakes and errors in the most important job, your most recent, the most important job on the resume, the one that they're going to look at the most, they're going to read with the most amount
Yep.
of depth. That's
Yep.
the one that's going to be imperfect. And all the really good jobs are going to be, and the really good jobs are going to be interviewed by or screened by people who really know what good resumes are like. So, all that to say, if you want to impress people, you need to have it done in advance.
Yep.
Period.
Yeah. All right. So here's our outline for our guidance on resumes. First, we're going to cover the basics. Then we're going to talk about contact information. We'll go to the top of the resume. Then we're going to talk about the meat of a resume, which is job history. And that has every single job has three parts: administrative data, responsibilities, and accomplishments. Then we'll talk about how to capture your education. We'll also have a section about things not to include on your resume, which have proliferated in the last 30 years. And then we'll talk about, as we mentioned before, resume maintenance.
Mhm.
So let's start
So,
with the basics.
yeah, let's start with the basics. At the end of this podcast, everybody who is listening is going to know how to have a great resume. When you do the work, it stands out so much that people will talk to you, even if your credentials are not exactly aligned, they're not going to care. They're going to find a way to make it work because your resume is going to scream to them, I'm a professional.
Yeah.
It will sing to them, no question. You will stand out from the crowd who, again,
Yeah.
in a slapdash kind of way, threw their resume together just to submit it. Yours is going to be that one that stands apart from the others. And that's
Yep.
what we want.
It
Mhm.
meets the first criteria, which is it's correct.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
exactly.
So let's start with the basics. First of all, one page. Okay. No matter who you are, folks, we are telling you now one page, full stop. Not one and a quarter because you're 45 years old. That second page will not get read. If I see a resume that has a staple with it, I get a
Mhm.
physical resume, or it prints out of my printer and it's 2 pages, I immediately raise an eyebrow. My resume, I'm 65 years old. I've had a 45-year work career. I have a one-page resume. Okay, now there are exceptions. If you're the CEO of a $500 million company, you've been vice president of marketing or vice president of operations of Fortune 500 companies, okay, you can do an executive resume, which is notably longer. But 99% of those of you who are listening right now, one page resumes, full stop. Okay. Uh, Anything longer than a page, by definition, must be 2 pages and must be somebody who's had an extensive career and could
Mhm.
only be seen at the very top of very large companies and be an executive. So you don't get one and a half because you couldn't make everything fit. I've probably spent 30% of my time after I get past the resumes which have errors, Sarah. The
Mhm.
resumes that I see when I'm asked to edit them, inevitably I'm cutting out a half a page. And when I
Yeah.
finish and say, if you get rid of all these things and change these things, it'll be one page. They're like, hey, this is better. I said, yeah, it's better.
Yeah.
And nobody was going to read the second page
That's
anyway.
the thing. That's exactly it. If people aren't going to even look at the second page, then folks, putting the words there for no one to read them is completely useless. Why? What a waste of time and paper. You might as well just fit it onto one page.
Yep,
Which takes us to white space is overrated. White space means nothing on a resume. White
nothing.
space is absolutely the antithesis of what you want.
Yes,
And again, talking about your resume, if you look at Mark's resume, any of our resumes, the margins are zero point 0.5 on the left and right and 0.75 at the top and the bottom. And it's
And can
just
I, yeah,
jammed.
and
Yeah.
can I just add something?
Yeah.
Actually, if you do that in Word, Word will tell you we have to adjust the margins. You can force it,
Uh-huh.
but you can actually go to 0.66 on the bottom. That's the smallest Word will allow you. Otherwise, the common printer might not print
Wait,
That
like
last
at the bottom.
that last line fully. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, and folks, envision in your mind this piece of paper, words to all the corners, jammed full, 10-point font. You're trying to distill your entire professional career, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, onto one page. We're not saying necessarily to get it onto a single page, use less words. We're just saying capitalize on the space you've got. Use
Yes.
all the page.
Yeah, and we hear this white space thing a lot that it needs to be visually appealing. No, you're talking about designers and artists and people
Hmm.
who want to show interesting and clever resumes. Your resume should not be interesting or clever. It should be dense and it should show two things. Actually, if you get rid of how to get in contact with you, it
Hmm.
should only show essentially two things: what you've done and how well you've done it. And that's it.
Yeah.
Because if I'm looking at 100 resumes, how do you know that I would have the same design sensitivity that you do? The fact is, I
Yeah.
don't. And the
You don't.
people who read them in batches, they don't want that. They don't want something super clever. You hear stories every once in a while of people putting a cigarette hole in the middle of it and saying, I'm burning to come to work for your company. Okay, that's cute, but it's not going to get you an interview. Okay.
No.
Maybe if you're a marketing person.
Exactly. I was
Okay,
going to say, if
fine.
you're a marketing
Yeah.
person, if you're a designer, like
Yeah.
there are certain jobs where this these additional criteria might actually be beneficial. But again,
Yeah.
for the
No,
vast, vast,
99%.
vast majority of us,
It's
exactly.
just text
It's
on a
just,
page.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I see a lot of resumes which are 2 pages long, but, or a page and a half long, but all of the bullets only go halfway across the left to right margin. I'm like, well, why don't you write more about that bullet and fill up the
Yeah.
page that you have rather than just putting more? And
Hmm.
frankly, a good bullet, as we'll describe here in a minute, an accomplishment bullet, um, needs to be clear about what you did and how you did it. And it's
Hmm.
not just
Yeah, it's
you're
not a
responsible
teaser.
for something. No, no. In
Yeah.
fact, every bullet, as again we'll talk about in just a minute, every bullet should be an accomplishment. If it's on your resume, it should be an accomplishment that you can develop a 3 to 5 minute accomplishment answer for that.
Hmm.
And if you want to know how to answer accomplishment questions, we have podcasts about that, and we also have our interviewing series, which will
Interviewing
teach you
series. Hmm.
how to handle interviews and how to turn
Hmm.
your resume bullets into accomplishments. Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, next. Please don't pay anybody to help you. Resume preparation services are essentially typing services. By the way, when we hired Wendy, who was responsible for Career Tools for many years, she was thinking about going into a resume preparation service
Hmm.
because she was tired. I think she was working at Procter and Gamble or IBM. I can't remember. And she was the smartest person I've ever met about careers. And she said, yeah, I can type up people's resumes. I said, is that really what you want to do? Type somebody else's resumes and
Yeah.
spend hours just so they can like how you type? When in fact, in order to truly be good at it, you not only have to be able to type, you have to understand what you're typing about.
Hmm.
You can
Hmm.
type, obviously. And so spending money on somebody else's typing is a waste of money. Don't do
Hmm.
it.
And especially now when you're looking for a job, don't waste money.
Yeah, exactly. We have some friends who do very technical work. A lot of people in our community do technical work. If you have somebody who has a really nice desktop publishing system on their computer, that doesn't mean they know anything about the nuclear power business or about the machine tools business
Yeah.
or about designing car parts or any of those sorts of things. And then they mess up the acronyms.
Hmm.
They do all kinds of stuff. And they're trying to make it look pretty. And they're forgetting that what matters is density and content and context. So, no, don't pay for it ever. And once you listen to the podcast, you'll know what you need to do and never will think about having anybody else type it up, particularly if you manage it every 90 days for 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly it. Which takes me then to font size, 10-point font. And we're talking a standard font. So, like, choose Bookman or Times New Roman for the font style. A serif font might make it a little bit more readable if you're going with a 10-point font, but 10 is about the right size.
Yeah, I will say this. Most people don't know what sans serif and serif is. So let's be clear. Serif means foot in Italian. So a sans serif font is one without feet on the bottom of the letters. So newspapers generally are written in serif fonts. In other words, they have feet on the letters. It is a much more readable type of font style or type style. Okay. If you're doing sans serif, that works really good online, but it doesn't work good on paper.
Hmm. Perfect. Okay. So yes, and 10 point, that's the right size.
Right.
Now, if you're like 23, 24 years old and you're listening to this and you may just be, and you started your career and you want to go with 12-point font because you don't
You
have
don't
a
have as much
ton of
stuff.
past experience. Exactly. That's
Totally
totally
fine.
fine. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. What we would suggest is you start with 10 point and then you can determine whether or not you can make the lettering a little bit bigger, but try and go for a 10-point font in order to see whether or not your resume
Yes.
fits pre
Yes.
extending it or making it larger. Hmm.
Exactly.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you have 12 point, if you're somebody who's got 10 years experience and it's in 12 point, maybe your eyes are bad, so it's easier for you to read it, and it's longer than a page, put it in 10 point and you'll discover it'll magically shrink to one
Yeah,
page in
well.
many cases. Next, please, I've already alluded to this, please avoid cute marketing techniques. So use white paper. Okay. If you really feel the need to use yellow paper for some reason, okay, we're not, we're not so rule driven here that we don't understand there's some personality, but I would never give any extra credit to a differently colored resume. And if I'm reading your resume and I'm 65 years old, if I'm reading it and it's not black on white and you use some cream colored paper and a gray color to your font, it makes it harder to
Yeah,
read.
hard to read.
People at my age, if more senior people are looking at it, it's like looking at a restaurant menu that has beautiful colors in it and it's tan and light brown as a background. I'm sorry, I can't see those two things. So if you really want to use different colored paper, okay, we're not going to stand in your way, but please don't confuse marketing with the underlying purpose of a resume, which is to get you an interview. And that means it has to be effective. That means it has to be dense. And it's all about what you've done and how well you've done it. Okay. That's all your resume is about, what you've done and how well you've done it. The color of the paper means nothing to us.
Hmm.
Your resume, when we're reading it, and we're tired when we're reading it on a Friday night or over the weekend when HR sends us 50 resumes to look at, it's a one dimensional object. Okay.
Yeah.
We want the person, we want the accomplishments and the responsibilities to jump off the page. The page doesn't need to jump off the page itself because you're cute or it's clever or you have smiley faces on it. Dear gosh, don't include any emojis in your resume. Print it on good quality white paper. Don't try to be cute. You're
Yeah.
not that smart. We're not that dumb.
All right. That takes us then to contact information. And this is an area where we tend to give a little bit more leeway. We generally recommend centering your name at the top. That's the first line. Then below it, your address. Then below that, your phone number. Then below that, your email address. And, oh,
But
yeah,
if you want to save a line, that's 4 lines. You could put your name and your address and then put both your phone and your email
on a
address
single line.
on the single line. That's
Yep.
you're saving 1 line. And folks, if your resume is a whole page and 10 lines, send it to me and I can fit it into 1 page. I'm amazed at the number of people, for instance, who have bullets that have a carriage return in the middle of them, and there's half of a line of text below it to finish the previous bullet. Well, the way people who know resumes look at that is you've wasted a half a line, and there's
Yeah.
got to be a way to write that bullet above
Differently.
so that
Yeah.
you could fit it on 1 line. You're literally managing line space on a
Hmm.
resume. That's part of the reason we want you to go to 10 point. And so if you could put your email address and phone number on 1 line, you've got one more line for another accomplishment. Your email address or your phone number will not get you an interview, but an accomplishment bullet might.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I'm assuming that many of you are probably, some of you may be printing your resume, handing it in, giving it to a friend to give to their boss. Many of you are probably going to be emailing your resume as
Yeah.
well. Make sure that your email address is hyperlinked. Right. Make sure that it's a recognizable as a link that could either be clicked on, or if it's printed out, you can clearly tell that is the email address piece of it.
Yep.
If you'd like to add like your personal web page, maybe you have your own blog that you want to put there, you absolutely can. Make sure though that they're relevant. Now, and I think back to again these designers, graphic designers, you might have a portfolio, you might have things that
Yeah,
you want to
sure.
share. If
There
it's
are some
relevant,
exceptions. Yeah.
by all means,
Yeah.
but only if it's relevant.
Yeah.
And if you have room at the top to put your name in 12 point, like a little bit larger than the other things, go for it. But
Yeah.
again, start at 10 and make it bigger later. You don't want to be running out of room later on.
And I want to go back to the part about a blog or perhaps your portfolio if you're a designer or something like that. Those are reasonable exceptions to this guidance, but they are exceptionally rare exceptions.
Yeah.
Okay. 99% of you will not have that. If you have a blog about your family life, don't include it. If you have a blog about your work life, but it's just musings and it's not new thinking. It's not analysis. It's not talking about what's happening in the industry. If you're just capturing thoughts here and there, if nobody's reading your blog, and you should be having blog statistics given to you if you have a blog, that's probably an indication that it's not worthy to go on your resume.
Yeah. Like I think the example here I'm thinking in my mind, Mark, is you may not have a blog, but you've got social media, dear listener. That doesn't go there.
No,
You don't include like the link to maybe your link to your LinkedIn,
sure.
maybe,
You could put
but
a link to LinkedIn
that
if you
would be
wanted.
like
Yeah.
the only one that goes there. Like
Yeah.
not like how do I
And
find you on
I can hear
Twitter?
people listening right now say, "Oh, LinkedIn's not for me. I prefer to be on Instagram." Okay, go ahead. And it better be work Instagram. It better be
Hmm.
professional Instagram. We don't want to see pictures of you hanging out by the pool. We don't need to see pictures of your kids. We don't need to see pictures of your family. None of that stuff. In fact, there are so many Instagram profiles that are private because they're personal rather than
Yeah,
professional. And I totally
absolutely.
respect that. I totally
Completely.
respect that.
Hmm.
But yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And folks, I'm going to assume that you're going to put a phone number. Most of us have a phone. Make sure that the phone has some sort of answering system, like voicemail. And
And the
don't just,
voicemail can't be full.
yeah, exactly. The
Dude,
voicemail can't be full, or this
dude.
this this mailbox is not yet set up,
Oh,
like those ones. Like I'm like, what?
rookie error. Yeah.
What's the
I want
thing?
to
What's
call you.
this?
I'm trying to set up an interview and I get, I'm sorry, this voicemail box hasn't been set up. You are not the CIA. Okay. You're
Yeah,
not.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I'm going to assume this happens to all of us that because you rarely listen to messages, you rarely update your automated message, the
Right.
receipt message. So before y'all go sending out your resumes the next time, you got to listen to that thing. It should be a good what is it called? What would it be called? Like an acceptance, the good answering
I don't,
statement,
I don't
something
know.
like,
Yeah.
"Hi, this is Sarah. I'm available. Please leave a message."
I'm not available. You
Or
mean.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
not
not.
available. Please leave a message. Something like that. Something
Yeah.
basic and small. Don't say the date. This is
No.
Sarah and it's the 12th of August because it's going to go out of date immediately. Just
Yeah.
something nice, something
Yeah.
standard, simple.
And you should sound friendly and agreeable.
Yeah.
I actually had to coach Wendy and Mike on their voicemail messages. I called them and I got, "This is Mike, leave a message." Or I got, "This is Wendy, leave a message." I'm like, "No, I told Wendy, I want it to sound like you're agreeable, like you're
Yeah.
friendly, like
I want to hear
you're
energy.
yeah, yeah."
Yeah.
It's like,
Smile when you
"Hey,
say it.
this is Mark. I'm not available. Please leave a message. I'll call you back as soon as I can. Thanks." Okay.
Yeah.
You want to project energy in your interviews and every chance you get.
Hmm.
One of our laws, one of Horseman's laws when it comes to interviewing is I will take 90% less ability for 10% more positive attitude every day of the week. I have told people to triple the level of their energy in an interview, and they still would not be bouncing up against hitting the upper end of the energy scale
Yeah.
that's tolerable in an interview. I have to pull things out of people. And if you make me work to do it, if I get a lackluster, a lifeless voicemail, I'm gonna be like, nope, not my person. Particularly in the modern world, where we're talking about everybody being a leader, and then you leave a message like, Hi, this is Mark. Please call me back. Right? That's not a
Yeah.
leader. Now you might think,
Mm,
oh, that's my authentic self. Well, interviewing and resumes are not about your authentic self. They're about your best self.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And folks, the email address you use on your resume, it should be something that you check
Every
every
day.
single day. Same thing with your voicemail. Don't let just people have putting voicemails on your phone that you just leave into the ether and you're not listening to them or answering them. And when it comes to email addresses, something simple, basic, Sarah Horstman at gmail.com.
Yep.
Not like my sister's going
Yeah.
to kill me for this one. Batbabe at gmail.com, which is
Yeah.
cute if you like Batman and you grew up in the
Yeah.
90s. But for the
Yeah.
rest of us, it's like,
No.
not professional, dude.
Yeah.
Not professional.
Having babe in a female's email address, bad form.
Bad
Absolutely
form.
bad form. Yeah. And I'm amazed by the people who haven't figured out that if you use Gmail, you can have Gmail notify you when you get an email because people tell me all the time, oh, that's my personal email. I
Yeah,
don't
I
check it.
barely look at
If
it.
you put your personal email on a resume, you want to be checking it every day because that resume is potentially generating opportunities,
Mhm.
right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now we come to the most important part of your resume. The admin stuff at the top. By the way, in case we weren't clear, generally we recommend you bold your name at the top in 10 point, or you could do it in 12 point if you have room, particularly if you're newer as a professional in your career. And all of that is centered at the top.
Yeah.
Now you might say, well, I'd kind of like to do it differently. Well, that's like saying, I want to put the ending of my story at the beginning because I'm clever, or I'm interesting, or whatever. That's not how people read stories. People expect the ending to be at the ending. People like us who see lots of resumes, we expect a resume to be immediately recognizable as such when we
Hmm.
see it. Every once in a while, I get a resume with the name and address and phone number justified left rather than
Yeah.
centered. And if I held that up 20 feet away from people, they can't tell it's a resume. You
Yeah.
should be able to hold your resume up, even though at 10-point type, they can't see a word of it. And they should be able to know it's this called metadata. The metadata of your resume says this is a resume.
Hmm.
Because if I've got 100 resumes to go through in a stack, when I come up on something that doesn't look like a resume, I don't know it's a resume. All of my rules for reading the resume go out the window. And now I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be hard. They've done
Hmm.
something different. Maybe they're clever. Maybe they're cleverer than me. Maybe I'll actually end up liking you. But the chances are 1 in 50 that I will like you changing the standard format of a resume. When I can't remember where I was at working at GE and an executive there, I want to say who was a senior vice president, it might have been an executive vice president. He was helping his son with his resume. He was
Hmm.
just graduating, I think, from Rensselaer in New York. Really smart young man. I met him, great kid. And he said, "Hey, Dad, the career services office, as is often true,
Hmm.
they don't really. They have a bunch of different resume formats I can choose from, but I figure I'll use yours. And if I had a dad who was an SVP or an
I would
EVP at
too.
General Electric, I would
Good
use that
point.
format."
Hmm.
Um, and his dad said, "Well, I'll send you mine." And so he said to me, he says, "Mark, I know you know resumes pretty well. You used to be a recruiter. Look at this." And I said, "Oh, that's your resume." He says, "Yeah, how do you know?" I said, "Because it looks like a resume."
Yeah.
Now his was 2 pages long. And then he asked me, "Okay, will you coach my kid on his resume?" Which
Yeah.
I did. But it was standard. His name at the top in
Yeah.
bold, then 2 lines of admin, or contact information, and then job history, and then
Mhm.
schooling at the bottom. Yeah. Okay. So let's
Yeah.
get to job
Yeah.
history.
Yeah.
This is the whole key to your resume. Okay.
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
is a listing of jobs that you've had in reverse chronological order. Start with your most recent job and go backwards as you go down the page. Okay.
Hmm.
Now,
Exactly.
we're going to go into this in enormous detail, but I consider this to be the single biggest strategic miss of every resume that I don't like. In addition to all the errors and all the stupid stuff that people do, people think they can reinvent an industry. You don't want to. You don't need to stand out because of your resume. Your resume should stand out because the quality of your
Yeah. The
responsibilities and your accomplishments,
contents. Hmm.
nothing else. Okay.
Yeah.
So each job that you list, every job that you've held, has 3 parts to it. There's a little bit of administration, again, we're going to detail these in just a moment in enormous detail. Then there's a paragraph of job responsibilities written in prose form,
Mm-hmm.
and then accomplishment bullets below that. And that's it. So if you had 8 jobs and I held your resume up 20 feet away from you, you could see that centered at the top is that contact information. And then there are 8 blocks of text from the top to the bottom, followed by a line or two of education. And that is it. That's it. Now, I'm going to tell you the single biggest strategic mistake, and I want you to know it before we start going through the responsibilities and accomplishments portion of this. And if you don't know, we probably have 20 other podcasts about resumes
Yes, absolutely.
at Manager Tools, and we encourage you to come listen. You can listen wherever you hear podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Where else are we? Spotify, YouTube, certainly Apple. Is there anywhere
Apple
else?
Podcasts.
Apple Podcasts. Yeah.
No, isn't
Okay.
that everything?
So here's the single biggest strategic mistake that I see made. People think that bullets matter. And so they take their responsibilities, which are supposed to be in a prose paragraph,
Mm-hmm.
responsible for this and this and this, period, responsible for this and this, period, responsible for this, responsible for this. Okay. That's the things you were paid to do, whether you did them well or not. Bullets are for things you did which no one else did, right?
Yeah.
Other
It
people
wasn't a
may have done
requirement
similar.
of the
No,
job.
right.
It
And
was your
here's the
success
mistake.
within. Mhm.
You turn your responsibilities paragraph into bullets thinking, oh, bullets are what's important
They
on a
stand
resume.
out more. Mhm.
And bullets are what's important because we want to see how well you did your job, and that's your accomplishments. We want to see how well you did against your responsibilities. But when you turn your responsibilities into bullets and you say responsible for X in a bullet, you run the risk of being seen by people who review resumes routinely as somebody who got fired from your job. I'm not kidding you. That's what we think. Now you say, well, wait a minute. I didn't get fired from my job. Why are they reading that into my resume? Because you violated the rule that responsibilities are in prose and accomplishments are bullets. If you
Mhm.
didn't have any accomplishments in a job, what people do, what people who get fired do, is they don't have
Yep.
any accomplishments. So they put their responsibilities into bullets, and therefore your resume looks like every job has a bunch of bullets or accomplishments. You're essentially trying to trick the person into thinking that you did things when in fact when we read it we know that you didn't do those things, you were just responsible for them. You might have done them so poorly you got fired, but you want to list them as bullets. So we're going to talk about 3 things here. We're going to talk about the admin data, we're going to talk about your the
Responsibilities.
responsibilities, and then
Yep.
accomplishments, and I want
Mhm.
to make that distinction clear before we go through it. Okay.
Mhm. Okay.
Sorry, Sarah.
So no, that's all right. That's all right. Let's start with the admin. Now this information should be both bold and underlined. And we recommend putting the dates first in months and years, followed by a colon. Next, put the job title. If your job title was a little bit vague, like senior manager, or an unusual job title
Right.
in a way, you can give a little bit more information if you like the team that you are managing, for example, senior manager, project management office, for
Yeah.
example, just
Yeah.
to give it a little bit more context. And
I,
then finally, you have the company that you worked for and location in that role.
right.
So,
So, an example of this would be, and by the way, we didn't say it, just to be clear, at the top, your contact information is all centered. Okay. Everything else in your resume is left justified. Okay. Oh, by the way, don't try to make your resume pretty by making it also right justified so that the right side doesn't have a jagged edge. Some people think that's cool to do that. There are some books that are written that way, and it actually adds some formalism to it and so on. The problem is that in order to do that, your word processing software, what it has to do is change the spacing between the letters,
mhm.
and it makes it harder to read. Human brains are good at reading when they know the kernel, the spacing between every letter. There is some subtle kernel spacing between unusual letters. K's and X's sometimes get different spacing, but for the most part, it's trivially small, And it is not what is done when you're taking 40 characters and then spreading them out so that they justify on the right, even though you could have fit 65 characters in there.
Yeah.
That will make that bullet harder to read, and it will cancel out and then some the benefit that you think you're getting because you've got it both left and right justified. Okay.
Hmm.
So, an example. This is an example of the administrative data for one job on one person's resume. November 2022 to, you could put a dash if you want, to November 2023, colon, senior manager, Diet Coke marketing team, comma, Coca-Cola company, comma, Atlanta, comma, Georgia. Full stop or period.
Hmm. And all
That's
of
it.
those words, again, are bold and underlined,
Yep.
the entire line. Mhm. Exactly. And if that's the only bold and underlining that you do at your sorry, and if that's the only bold and underlining that you do on your resume, other than your name at the top, obviously, it makes it easy for us to see because you can see, again, at a distance, hold that resume across the room. You can see exactly where each job starts and stops because you know the bolded
Yeah.
underlined line is the beginning of a new chunk, a new
Yeah.
section, if you will.
Exactly.
This is the first in a series of 8 sections. There are 8 jobs.
And for those of you who are persnickety about verbiage and grammar and usage and so on, when we say it's the only bold and underlined thing other than your name at the top, we did not recommend your name be underlined at the top. Okay. Don't underline your name at the top. The only thing that gets underlined is this bolded part, which is the administrative data of a job. And
Yeah.
it helps us. We can scan very quickly because of the bold and underlining. You're helping
Yeah.
us learn very quickly. Okay, what jobs has she had and in what order? One
How
of the
many are here?
contexts is right. One
Mhm.
of the qualitative evaluations we make has this person had increasing levels of responsibility throughout their career. Now, in some cases, if you're interviewing for the same job you're in now at a different company, and that's the only job you've ever had, that's fine. Okay. But for many resumes, you're showing increasing levels of responsibility. And what we're going to do after we look at your name, so now we know who we're thinking about. So I'm thinking about this guy, Joe.
Mhm.
I've got Joe in my head. I know he lives in Kankakee, Illinois. And I'm going to go right down and look very quickly at the bold underlined parts and see, do I see a progression of responsibilities? Yeah.
Mhm. Mark,
Okay.
do you mind if I go back just 1 second
Sure.
and make sure that I hit on the make sure you keep the months there
Oh, yes. We need
information?
to talk
Yeah.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Folks, sometimes, and I know you're trying to save line space and you're trying to cut out unnecessary characters and things. Something to make sure that your resume, your admin line, I should say, includes is both month and year of
Yep.
each of the jobs held. It can't be 2022 to 2023 because I don't know, as a reader of your resume, if you held that job for 2 years or 1 month. I can't tell the
Yeah.
difference.
Can't tell
You
the difference.
must have the months there.
Yeah. Also, if you're wanting to save space, because actually that one I just read is kind of long, right?
It is.
Abbreviate November. Just put NOV without a period. NOV space 2022 to dash NOV space 2023 colon. Yeah.
Yeah, and cut that right down. Make it
And if
shorter.
you had to, you could put senior manager as SR period
SR.
space
Mhm.
capital MGR period if you wanted to. I don't
Mhm.
think you need to, but if you're worried
Yeah.
about line spacing when you get
Yep.
done, because as soon as you finish that admin on the same line, you're going to start putting your responsibilities. So it's part of that first
The first
paragraph.
line.
It's
Yeah.
essentially
Yeah.
the introduction to your responsibilities paragraph. And you may want to save a few spaces in there in order to keep that last line of your responsibilities
From
from
rolling
creating.
over.
Yeah, there that is, by the way, that's called, I can never remember this. In grammar, there are widows and orphans. Widows, I think, are words that maybe it's an orphan. An orphan is a word that is the last line of a sentence
Yeah.
and a paragraph. No, I'm sorry, the last word of both a sentence and a paragraph that
The
doesn't fit on the last line
wrapped.
and it shows up as a single word. You've
Yeah.
wasted an entire line that
Entire
you could be
line.
used
Entire
for an
line for
accomplishment. So,
one word.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Not good.
By the way, feel free to write in. I'm a big grammar fan, and I always get widows and orphans wrong. I'm really good at ITS. It's whether it's an apostrophe or not, but I'm not really good about widows and orphans. Yeah. But I do know what a kernel is. So there's that.
There's that,
Yeah.
which is nice. All right, responsibilities.
Yeah. So next, responsibilities. You're going to talk about what you were responsible for in your job. This responsibilities paragraph, let's say 5 people held the job over
Mhm.
the course of 3 or 4 years, right? And the job didn't change appreciably. They will have largely the exact same responsibilities paragraph.
Yeah.
Okay. It does, you don't need to make responsibilities sound better. Although I will tell you, the previous 4 people may be terrible resume writers and
Yeah,
do a
you might want to
terrible
make it better
job.
than
So
theirs,
you might
but
want to make it better than theirs. But still, the idea here is you're simply talking about the truth.
it's very
Okay.
matter of
That,
fact.
yeah, it's, you're essentially capturing what is technically correct. So
Mhm.
it's 2 to 3 to 4 sentences of responsibilities for the job. Ideally, it would come from job descriptions. And if you're struggling, your company's probably got a job description from you, and that will probably help. Um, that said, a lot of job descriptions are terrible, so it may
Mhm.
only be a starting point for you. And you want to describe what the responsibilities of your job are.
Exactly. So I'll give you a couple examples. It could be
Yeah.
something like responsible for the budgeting and coordination of a $3 million quality improvement program, or responsible for motivating 15 call center representatives to achieve quality, quantity, and sales goals.
And we say or there, but those hypothetically, those are very different. But you, again, you could have 2 to 3 or 4
Yes.
sentences. Now, do not make it 8 sentences long and the last sentence be responsible for quarterly cleanup of the common areas in our team's location. Okay. That doesn't reach the level. You're going to have to choose what's most
hmm
important for some jobs, particularly as your jobs get more complex and bigger. So 4
Yeah.
at the most. Okay. Those sentences start with an action verb: oversee, responsible for, supervise, reduce, enhance. It's a great way to start those sentences. Okay. Again, this continues all in one line. So you finish your job title and then you go right into responsible for. Okay. There's nothing wrong with having 3 or 4 sentences which start with responsible for. Okay. But you could also probably do oversee, supervise, whatever. Okay. You don't start a new paragraph after your job location. Again, it runs right onto
Right.
the same line. You can
hmm
just put a dash after that location. In the example, I think it was Atlanta, Georgia. You just put a dash and then go right into it.
hmm
2 to 4 sentences of your responsibilities. We want to know what job you're responsible for doing, because without that, your accomplishments are contextless. We
Yeah,
don't know
that's
what you were
why.
responsible for.
hmm
And a lot of times, what we find is people put accomplishments and they essentially rule themselves out because the responsibilities say these 3 things, but the accomplishments say 3 things that not only are not those things, they're not even close to being as important to those things based on our understanding of what your job was. So be
Yeah.
careful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The responsibilities are simply to give people a register of how to
Yes.
fit those accomplishments in. The responsibilities, folks, aren't important. That's not the part that the hiring manager or the person reviewing your resume cares too terribly about. Too terribly much about. They're just there to set context. They give context for the really important part. And the important part
Yeah.
is your accomplishments.
Yeah, if the first responsibility sentence is the one that says responsible for motivating 15 call center representatives to achieve quality, quantity, and sales goals, a couple of your first a couple of those top bullets have to be about quality, quantity, and sales goals, and
Hmm.
perhaps even a representative or two who got promoted or was
Yep.
sales rep of the quarter or something like that.
hmm
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Okay,
yeah,
which takes us then to accomplishments. So now, folks, you finished that paragraph looking section at the top there, and what you're going to do is you're going to hit enter, hit a carriage return, and you're going to start putting in bullets. These bullets are essentially accomplishments that again relate to your job responsibilities from a
yeah,
spacing perspective. You
yes,
don't want the automatic, what's it called? It automatically indents bullets,
Oh,
instead of
bullets. Yes, a
keeping
great
them
point.
left
Yeah,
justified, you want to
often.
override that auto
Yeah.
programming in
If it tabs it to the
yeah,
right,
don't tab it.
what it's doing is adding a tab.
It
All you have
is.
to do is hit backspace and it will go
Yeah.
back to
And knock
right
it
there at the
back, knock it
beginning. Yeah.
right back, left
In
justified,
Yeah.
bullet,
In
space,
most word processing.
accomplishment.
Yeah. You don't want to tab it to the left to make it more obvious it's an accomplishment.
Mm-mm.
That's what the bullet is there
That's what the
for.
bullets are
And
for.
if you tab to the right 5 spaces, you lose five
You
spaces.
lose five
Five
spaces.
spaces in
Now you're
your
creating
accomplishment bullet.
orphans
Yes,
again.
exactly. Well,
The
we
whole
hope we
thing.
have no orphans or widows or whatever they are. Okay, yeah. So if one of your responsibilities is motivating 15 call center representatives to achieve quality, quantity, and sales goals, we'd like to hear how well you did on your sales goals, or your quality goals, or your quantity goals, or all three. Start with an action verb telling how you improve sales, how you reduce costs, how you improve quality, how you reduced waste, all those core things that people talk about over and over again. So, some examples. Achieved, there's the action verb, 94% of quality standards within 2 months on the job. Ranked number one in the company in volume of calls over a three-month sales push period. Ranked fifth out of 95 teams in sales quota achieved during quarters 2, 3, and 4 for year 2024. Reduced costs by 9% by creating innovating login system. Increase sales by 4% by coaching on-course sales operations or course sales techniques with top performers on my team. Helped get promoted 2 representatives who had been previously offered jobs but had failed to get through the interviewing process. Mind you, some of these seem longer, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
have to be careful about how to write them so they fit on one line. Reduced turnover from previous manager by 85%. If you had 10 responsibilities, you're going to write 3 or 4 of them that you did really well. Now, you may have 10 that you had been capturing each quarter when you're updating your resume in your current job, but you'll have to probably narrow them down to less than 10 unless you're fairly new in your career and you did do all those 10 accomplishments and you have the room on one page. And again, as we said before, they've got to be relevant to the position you're currently interviewing for. So if you have 20, you might choose the 6 that work. You might choose numbers 1, 4, 5, and 9 for job A, and 2, 3, 6, 10, and 11 for job B, because they, in your opinion, based on your understanding of the 2 different jobs you're interviewing for, one set is better than another for the different jobs. You might have 3 or 4 responsibility sentences, and you might have 5 or 6 accomplishments. So you might have 5 or 6 bullets.
Mm-hmm.
Every accomplishment is a bullet. Don't try to put an and then start another accomplishment in a single bullet. Every bullet is
Yeah.
one accomplishment.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And folks, just like we said about the responsibilities, if we looked at other people who'd done that job around a similar time, their responsibilities would be relatively similar. In this context, when we're talking about accomplishments, the key thing is those bullets relate to you and you alone. These accomplishments are yours and wouldn't apply to the person who previously had that job, unless
Yes.
I mean, I guess a world exists where they could do the exact same percentage improvement,
Right.
or the exact same sales improvement, or the exact same reduction in waste, whatever it might be. But chances are unlikely. The accomplishments are about you. These are yours. Whereas the responsibilities, that part is part of the job title. You didn't do that. The job called for that. The
Yep.
bullets are what make this resume yours. And of course, tell us how well you did doing that job, which
Yeah.
you were responsible for.
And if you're struggling with bullets, you're normal. If you're struggling with accomplishments, that's normal, about how to write
Yeah.
them and so on. And we have other podcasts in the Career Tools history that talk specifically about how to craft a bullet in detail, usually by using an action verb to begin and then stating the result, achieved a 9% improvement, and then usually the word by and telling what specifically you did, what the key thing you did that led to that improvement. That's the standard sort of 3-part 3 components of a successful bullet: an action verb followed by an objective, not subjective, an objective outcome, 9%, $10 million, $5 million, $1,000, whatever, followed by the action you took. Putting achieved 5% sales increase is good, but it would be a lot better if we knew what you actually did, because that will give us more alignment and understand you better.
And remember, those accomplishment bullets, those little round dots, should be right, left, flush with the margin, not indented. And you want each one of those accomplishment bullets, those lines, to fit on a single row, a single
Yes.
line, if at all
Yep.
possible. So you're going to write it out, and then you're probably going to have to play with it a little bit and reword it and shorten it somehow so that you can get all of your accomplishment onto a single line without sacrificing detail.
Yep.
And I mean, this is where I'm thinking to myself, I could just use ChatGPT for that. Like, just paste it in there, say, reword this into something that is no more than 6 words in length. And
Exactly.
see if it'll reword it. See if it'll change it up for you. You're going to still want to read it. You're still going to want to adjust it, folks,
look.
but see if it can come up with a new way to write out that.
If you've never done this before, obviously we have a resume workbook that you can get and it tells
Yep.
you all kinds of stuff. I think resume workbook is available for
For the Career Tools license,
Career Tools
and
licensee
Manager
and
Tools
Manager
and Executive Tools license.
right?
Everyone with a license
It's a
gets it.
65-page document, which
Yep.
takes you through in annoying detail, which for a document as important as this, the single most important document for your entire career,
Yeah,
it's worth going into annoying detail.
it is.
But we probably need to update that for AI. For instance, you could feed AI, a chatbot, your job description and say, please write a 3 to 4 sentence responsibilities paragraph for
Yeah.
a resume for this job description to put on my resume. You could also probably give it long-winded answers to all the accomplishments that you wrote each quarter and say, there are 85 characters. I'm making that up, folks. I don't know how many characters there are in a line at 10 point. There are 85 characters. Please turn each one of these accomplishments that I have typed out into no more than 85 character accomplishments.
Yep.
It would do it
Yeah.
like that,
Boom.
right?
Done.
Yeah. So
Shorten
you-
it for you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, we still want you to follow the guidance of action verb,
Yes.
quantitative outcome, quantitative accomplishment, or quantitative result, and then the action that you took. But now that you know that, that will help you think
Yeah.
about writing it every quarter when you sit down creating your career management document.
Yeah.
And then after your last bullet in each one, you're going to hit a carriage return, and there's a line of white space before you start your next responsibilities paragraph. Yeah.
Exactly. And the recruiter is going to look through your employment history. And folks, if you've got like a 2-year gap, be ready to explain it.
Yes.
If
It's,
you get a
and let's say this,
call.
it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. If you have a legitimate 2-year, look, if you got fired and you had a long job search, don't
Yeah.
shy away from that. Well, I got fired and I had a very long job search. If you, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of
No,
us. Go
no,
ahead,
this is
go
great.
ahead.
That's
So,
exactly
yeah.
where we were going. Don't be
Yeah.
defensive about it, folks. Don't. We would rather have honesty and straightforwardness than being cagey or shady or like trying to
Oh.
like make it look better than it really was. We've all been through some stuff.
Yeah.
Just say it. It's okay. Say, I had cancer. I was 2 years out of the workforce. I'm back and I'm ready to go. And be ready to talk about breaks of employment like I stayed home. I had a kid. That's a
Yeah.
legitimate reason
Way
to
legit.
stay home.
More important than work.
Exactly. You don't need to be defensive about it. You don't need to hide it. You don't need to fudge dates to make it look on your resume like
Yeah.
there was no career gap. That's lying. Don't
Yeah.
lie on your resumes. Don't lie at all. But don't lie on your resume. What you're trying to do here is market yourself. Marketing is not lying.
Yeah. In fact, there's a phrase we use for interviewing and for resumes. A lot of people try to be truthfully persuasive in their resume and in the interviews. In other words, they start with persuasiveness and then see what they can do to make it truthful. Okay, so
Yeah.
they're going to they're going to make sure that they're truthful. What you really should be shooting for is persuasively truthful. In other words, I'm going to start with the truth and then I'll do what I can to make it persuasive without stretching the truth too far in a way that is uncomfortable. I have a phrase which is never tell the truth in such a way that the other person thinks it's not right.
Yeah.
Right? If you tell the truth and it's designed to make someone think something else, that's essentially a lie. Now, of course, Mike and I went to West Point and we're old fashioned about that. But those of us who look at resumes, we're absolutely on alert for anything that smacks of persuasiveness without roots in the truth.
Mhm.
And again, it's okay to have a break. If I ask you what's the break for and you say it's a long story, I'm immediately negative.
Yeah.
Okay. In other words, you're not willing to tell me. That's okay. But all things being equal, if you're not willing to tell me, okay, it's a long story. I don't need to go there. You're telling me I don't need to go there. Fine. However, if I have another resume that's largely equivalent to yours and they don't have a break, I'm going to choose them over you.
Yeah.
So you might as
Exactly.
well admit it. And
Might as well
we
admit it.
coach people all the time who have gotten fired,
Yeah.
who have gotten laid off, who had long job searches. Just tell people, frankly, folks, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Okay. Or even better, they actually do care and they understand that's life.
Hmm.
Life is different than it was 40 years ago. It's better in a lot of ways, but careers have gotten harder to manage in many, many ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Imagine if you get the job and then the truth comes out later. You don't want that job.
Oh,
You
that's
don't
not
want that
good.
job, folks. You
No,
don't. You don't. You
no.
might as well be truthful and not get it.
Yeah. Oh, I can think of 20 or 30 people in the last 30 or 35, 40 years that put something on a resume and then somebody went back and checked after they started and said, I'm sorry, it says here you have a degree and you don't. And it's not the degree we
Uh-huh.
care about. We didn't need the degree, but now
It's the
you've lied to
honesty.
us and you've
Yeah.
misled us to get the job. And so you're fired. And by the
Yeah.
way, in some cases, they sue
Yeah.
because you misled them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. All right, that takes us to education.
Yeah.
And folks, put your education at the bottom. Now you've got, again, I'm envisioning this. You've got all your admin stuff centered at the top. Then
Oh,
you've got these,
context stuff at the top.
sorry,
Contact.
contact stuff. Thank
Yeah.
you. Contact
Yeah.
stuff up at the top. Then you have all of your bullets
Yeah.
of your jobs. And now your education goes at the bottom. It would be the degree using standard degree abbreviations, so like BA, BS, MBA, etc.,
Yep.
followed by your concentration or major, followed by your school, followed by the location of your school, then the date you graduated. Simple as that.
And people ask me about this, the location of your school. Folks, it matters. Okay. Um, if you went to University of Texas in San Antonio, you can't just put University of Texas because University of Texas in the United States is the flagship school for the University of Texas system, and it's harder to get into than any of the satellite schools, one of which is University of Texas San Antonio. So
Hmm.
you have to be specific about
Yeah.
the location.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
If
Exactly.
you've got a master's degree, it goes on top of your BS. Your most current education goes on top. Mine, for instance, I didn't get an MBA. Mine says BS, comma, mechanical engineering, comma, United States Military Academy, comma, West Point, comma, New York, period, May, comma, 1982. I know that makes me old. It also makes me wise. So
Mhm.
I
It
got
does.
that going for me,
Exactly.
which is
Exactly.
nice.
With age wisdom, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yes.
Exactly. And folks, I say this because I recently had someone ask me this. It doesn't matter what you're doing or for what you're applying, your education always goes in this location on your resume.
Yep.
And for some jobs, you may think, but this is an outlier because education is super important in this instance for whatever reason.
No.
But remember, it's all about the person reading resumes, and we want it to be we want it to follow a predictable format. The predictable format is regardless of importance, this is where education goes.
Yep.
This is where your education goes.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I should say, if you graduated magna or summa cum laude, you can include that as well. If you have only had two jobs and you want to include a couple of key extracurricular
Well, if
activities.
you've only
Yeah.
had two jobs and so you have extra space.
And so, sorry, and
Right.
so you have
Yes.
extra space, exactly. And so you want to include some key extracurricular activities, like you were the captain of the varsity volleyball team or something that
Sure.
shows leadership, for example. You can go ahead and put that there again, given you have space. And for fairly young people, 2 or 3 years out, if you want to include the fact that you had a job and it was president of your fraternity, or a unique job that you had in college, and you want to include that on your resume because it somehow applies to this position. Again, if you have space, and you probably do, if you're fairly junior, you can absolutely include that
Yeah.
stuff here. Hmm.
Now, we're focusing on college degrees. If you don't have a college degree, don't put any education on there. You may choose to put on there in education. You may choose to put a technical
A tech
certification.
school.
There's
Hmm.
nothing wrong with that at all.
Yep.
Gosh, yeah. I mean, if you went to a technical school and you got an associate's, but you got it in electrical mechanical repair, and that relates to your job, absolutely put that on there.
Hmm.
But high school, generally, you don't leave it on. So if high school was the last time you went to school, you have more room for accomplishments. I had a guy say once, "I feel bad. There's no education on mine." Dude, that was 20 years ago. I
Yeah.
don't really care. The day you graduate from college is not only the last day you'll ever be cool again, but it will also be the last time that your college really, really matters. Once you
Yeah.
get hired, we don't care about any of that stuff.
Hmm.
So the person who didn't go to college, that's okay. And the next 20 years, that's going to become more and more a thing. Okay, as we go forward,
Absolutely.
partially because there's so many self-taught technical geniuses out there that we love
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
entirely effective and don't need to have gone to college. So if you don't have if you have nothing more than high school, leave off your high school, and that gives you a couple of extra lines for accomplishment bullets, and that's good.
Mhm, mhm. And folks, if you work through college, include that.
Right.
Now we don't want to see like 12 fast food jobs in a row on your resume, but if you had a job that was anything other than menial, or if you had a menial job, but you kept it for all four
Yeah.
years of your college degree, and doing that, working, that is, helped you pay for college, we'd want that to be a bullet in the job that you had, that you
Yeah.
might think of. It's a fast food job, but yeah, it's the fast food job that puts you through school.
Yeah.
So
I
include
tell
it and
people,
use that as a bullet.
yeah, I tell people all the time, I would rather have a young person who got a 2.9 GPA in college, who grew up in the Midwest of the United States, worked on a farm, on his family farm as a kid. He or she worked on the farm, got up at 4 in the morning, had to work their chores before they got breakfast, went to school, maybe played a sport, then came home, worked some more, did homework, went to bed tired every night, paid their way entirely through college so they didn't have any debt because their family
Yeah.
couldn't afford it. I would rather have that kid with a 2.9 GPA than a 4.0 kid who went to the school his father or mother went to because they donate a lot of money, and he got a 4.0, but he wasn't involved in anything else.
Hmm.
I want the hardworking person,
Yeah,
right? And
absolutely.
that kind of working full time through college, we love that. And
Yeah.
if it hurts your GPA, when somebody asks what was your GPA, you tell them. And then, by the way, you always tell them immediately. You don't
Yeah.
say something like, well, it's
Yeah.
complicated.
You
No,
start
it's
with a
not
number.
complicated. It's just a number.
Yeah.
Tell us the number. And then say, and by the way, I worked my way through college. I paid 95% of my college by my jobs working in college.
Mhm.
That's the person who excites me. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
What about sections not to include? There are some things, some places on the web, because of course, it's on the internet, so
It's
therefore
got to
it's
be true.
true, right? By the way, if you're going to a website that somebody runs and they are giving out resume guidance and or career guidance, and they are less than 40 years old, and they don't. This is how they make their money, and it's not the coolest website you ever seen. I mean, cool. I mean, lots of traffic and that kind of thing. That should tell you how valuable their guidance
Yeah.
is. Okay, so a lot of these places say, "Oh, you need to do this or that to defeat the automatic scanning systems and so on." But we disagree.
Hmm. Hmm. Exactly. So let's start with no references. Folks, if we need your references, we can get your references. We know how to ask you. Now, you should have them handy. You should have people's names and phone numbers ready to give out if we ask for them, and addresses, so that if they want to send a questionnaire, or if they want to call somebody, that they can do that. There's the access, but you don't need to put it on your resume. It
Yeah.
takes up space that you could be using for responsibilities and accomplishments. It's a waste of space. We can get that if
Right.
we want it.
I tell you something else, folks. You know why references exist on resumes? This is where a history of professional world and the business world and the business history is helpful. References existed to make sure that white men hired other white men's kids who went to the same school, had the same religion, and were involved in the same clubs. That's what it was there for. Essentially, references started out as a form of discrimination. If you put references on your resume now, you're essentially sending a message that I want to be seen differently because of the people I know. And that's not what to
No,
have on your resume.
no, no, no.
Also,
And
no personal hobbies or interests.
mhm,
Okay. That used to be on there 30 years ago. Actually, it was on young people's resumes when they didn't have anything else to fill it up. We don't care. Okay. We'll ask you in the interview. Of course, your hobbies and interests shouldn't be weird like Satanism or something like that, but we don't care about it in your resume. I never look at it. It's not something of interest. Full stop.
and what I would say is, folks, we're not including in this section volunteer opportunities. Volunteer
Oh, sure.
opportunities are above the fold. Like
Right.
they are not personal hobbies and interests, although they may be for you. Um, Volunteer opportunities would be classified in this
Work
context as
experience.
a work experience, as
Yeah.
a job that you weren't being paid for. Exactly.
But
Exactly.
if you're volunteering is 1 hour a month, that's not enough to reach the threshold,
What's
right?
the threshold?
Well, probably
Mm,
five
once
to
a
10
week?
hours a week.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, 5 to 10 hours a week.
Yeah, because 1 hour a month, how much are we learning? How much are we developing?
Yeah,
How
that's
much are we
true.
growing? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
Okay. No list of technical skills.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Don't put these skills in one place. Include the skills in responsibilities or accomplishments that are appropriate with the job. I mean, if using a specific kind of software is necessary for a role, embed it in a responsibility or embed it in your
Yeah.
accomplishment bullet. But don't have like a list at the bottom of
Yeah.
all these technical skills that you possess.
And those people who say it has to be that way to help the resume scanning systems, they're wrong. The resume scanning systems will pick them up in other places,
Mhm.
and putting them all in one place takes up too
A
much
lot of
space.
room.
If you break them up and put key ones in the right places, you'll still have room to get all your responsibilities and bullets in there. But if you have 3 or 4 lines of technical skills at the top, that's 3 or 4 lines less of responsibilities and accomplishments.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, no objective statements. You don't need to waste that line or even more that would be necessary to be, with a carriage return to separate it from everything else. A recruiter might consider you for another job based on what your resume is. So don't put down as your
Yeah.
objective that this one particular job, okay? They know you're applying for a particular job, or if their system allows it, multiple jobs. They will compare you to all of those jobs. They're also smart enough to know this person's really good. They're a high performer. I'd like to consider them for something completely different. They might interview for the
Yeah.
initial job, and if they love you for that, they might say, "We'd like you to consider something else too." But an objective statement, you don't know enough about the company to have an
Yeah.
objective statement. And by the way, now objective statements seem to have morphed into this thing where you say, "I'm looking for a fast-paced, highly energetic culture of care and concern for other people, where I can serve humanity in a way that furthers the global mission." Right?
Yeah.
That's not an objective. That's a
No,
bunch of
it's not.
gobbledygook. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, don't do
Yeah.
that.
And folks, no personal summary. Now, we can
No.
start with the fact that you don't have the room.
But
Any
the resume is your personal
That's
summary.
the
The
thing.
whole thing.
That's exactly. If you've had any experience at all that we're excited about, we want to know about that job and how well you did it. Let your job history speak for itself. And let's
Yeah.
face it, when it comes to personal summary paragraphs, we all write the exact same buzzwords in a sentence. Collaborative,
Yes.
individual,
Oh,
excited and willing to
none of
go
those
the
words
extra
matter.
mile to,
They
yeah,
mean
they're
nothing. They
not, we're
mean
all
less
going to
than
say the
nothing.
same thing.
They
No one's
hurt
going
you.
to say, I'm kind of a jerk. I don't really
Yeah.
like people. I'm a bit of a stick in the mud, an eternal pessimist. No
Yeah.
one's personal summary says that, guys.
Yeah.
So everyone knows that people looking at your resume know it's it's not a real thing. It's not helpful information. Don't waste the space.
It's puffery,
It's
which is
puffery. Thank
technically
you.
legal according to the courts, but everybody knows it's puffery.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Last item, resume maintenance. So We've said this several times. Just want to be clear. We wanted to hit this point home. This is what, if you do this, your resume will write itself when you need it in a minute. Make time on your schedule once a quarter, 30 to 45 minutes, maybe an hour at the most, at the end of a
Mm-hmm.
workday, and take that time to review your resume. In other words, your responsibilities and your accomplishments in your current job every single quarter.
Folks, how many times have you tried to create your resume? And people ask me these things all the time and said, oh my gosh, that job that I had 7 years ago, geez, I don't remember anything about it. So now how am I supposed to come up with an accomplishment bullet?
Yeah.
Don't be
Yeah.
that guy tomorrow.
Yeah.
Help future you out
Yeah.
because today you is taking some time to write those accomplishments down while they're still in your head, and you're not having to play catch up 8 years from now when you totally have no
Yeah.
memory of what you did. If you did something really successful, add that bullet to your current job. After each quarter, you can pick and choose from your growing list of accomplishments. You can swap them out as needed for certain jobs. Certain accomplishments might
Right.
appeal differently for different
Right.
jobs.
Yeah.
And when your job changes, add that new job.
Yeah, and write a responsibilities paragraph, and then
Yep.
after in the next quarter, your responsible you'll understand it. Your understanding of your responsibilities will have changed, and so you'll update the responsibilities, and you'll probably have an accomplishment or two. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's basically, folks, it's a constant process of looking at what you have, looking at what you've done, seeing which is best, taking some off, adding some things, with one important caveat: in the time that you're maintaining it on a quarterly basis and drawing notes in the margin when you do something really well or one of your people gets promoted ahead of schedule, whatever's unique or different at your firm, as you're doing that, your resume might end up being longer than a page. It might be a
Hmm.
page and a quarter, but that's okay because it's in draft form. You'd
Exactly.
rather have some well written bullets that then you can delete, but all the to get to one page, but all the remaining bullets will have already been written and checked every single quarter, so you make sure you've got it right and you don't have any errors in them.
Exactly. So you might end up with a resume that's a page and a half long because it's been 18 months since you had to actually use your resume. And now you got to go back and you got to tighten it up.
Yeah.
But now you're being interviewed for a different job. So by having some additional bullets on your most current job or your last couple of jobs, you can look at all the bullets rather than the just 2 or 3 or 5 bullets of each. And then you can ask which of these bullets is most relevant to the job I'm interviewing for now. And this is how we tailor our resume for the job. For each of our jobs, we have responsibilities and we have more accomplishments than we know can
Yep.
fit in a single submitted resume. And we pick
In,
and choose.
yeah. In fact, you're going to create a one-page resume to send to people for the job you're interviewing for,
Yep.
but your what we call career management document might actually be 2 pages long, because if you're interviewing 2 years later and the job is distinctly different, you might want to go back through all 15 of the accomplishments for your
Yeah.
second or third job down and see if some of those would be changed
Right?
slightly different. I'd take some off and add some back.
Hmm.
What you need is raw material that has already been
Exactly.
vetted, so then you can make the tailoring the last step in your resume preparation process. And you should be able to send it out at the end of a workday,
Yeah.
frankly. I'll send it to you before I get home tonight. Yeah, good.
Hmm.
All
Hmm.
right, so let me summarize. So your resume should be one page, one page, one page, 10-point type, contact information at the top centered, a reverse chronological job history where each job has admin, responsibilities, and accomplishments listed as bullets, education on the bottom, and review it religiously every quarter, full stop.
And folks, remember, there are tons of other podcasts on resumes,
Oh,
resume creation on
50,
our website.
50 of them.
Yeah, exactly. Manager-tools.com. Check us out there. If you want to be a licensee, to Mark's earlier point, you can
Yes.
sign up, get our resume workbook. We also have the interviewing series is
Yep.
available
Our most popular
to
product.
folks.
Yeah.
Exactly, with Career Tools license and Manager Tools and Executive Tools, all the licenses.
Yep.
So there's tons of other useful information if you're currently in this process on our website. But again,
Yep.
I can't say this strongly enough or often enough. Tomorrow you will thank today you if you start today.
Yep.
Don't put it off. Don't, you know what, I'll do this in a few months. You're missing out on those really important, really valuable accomplishments that you're going to forget and you're never going to capture. And then when you really, really wish you had them, you're not going to have them. So
Yep.
start today.
It's the ant and the grasshopper story over and over and over again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the ant goes out and works and works and works and works, and he's stored up food for the winter, and the grasshopper lays around, and winter comes, and he has to go beg the ant for
Mhm.
food
Yeah.
because he didn't do the work.
Yeah. You got to do the work.
And it's especially galling when you really have an exciting job,
Yeah,
and
that's
then
the
you're
thing.
scrambling on the resume. Very bad, Judy.
Right?
Very bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Good.
Alrighty. That's that. Thank you,
All
Mark.
right. Thanks,
All
Sarah.
right. Bye, everyone. Okay.
Wow, an hour and 20 minutes.
An hour and 20 minutes. I'm going to stop recording to the cloud. Bye, YouTubers.